Hi, I'm Haley, and today I will be talking about mice models in medicine or the clinical setting. And I'm going to start my discussion with cancer. And cancer is a disease that you may or may not have heard of. You or your loved ones may have been affected by it, and it affects roughly 2 million new individuals each year. And over the course of one's lifetime, 1 in 5 people will develop cancer before the age of 75. And I choose this disease because it's very large and spans a very large amount of people. And so I'm sure you've heard of it or experienced it. And so that can frame my discussion of mouse models. And we characterize cancer as uncontrolled cell growth, meaning that the cells that make up your body start behaving differently and they grow in a manner that's unchecked and they begin to cause issues within your body. And you may be wondering, well, how do we treat cancer? So there's currently no cure for cancer. There's only treatments, and the most common is chemotherapy. It is a drug that is administered to patients diagnosed with cancer and works to kill or stop cancer cells from continuing to grow. And this drug has been approved for uses on humans, but in order to get there was other research that was conducted. And you may be wondering, well, how is this research conducted? And I'm sure we've all heard of mice. They're small rodents. They're about 4 to 8 inches in length, and you may have seen them around your house as they're fairly common in North America. And so when we study cancer, we use mice models. And before the cancer treatments like chemotherapy are tested on humans, they were once tested on mice. This allows us to make sure the effects of the drug are not harmful and can safely be used on humans. Many biology labs in UNC, and specifically one called the Arthur Lab at UNC, which I'm a part of, use mice models that have cancer in order to treat and model the diseases in a larger context. And you may be wondering, well, how are we using mice? They look so different from us. And first, our bodies have this thing called DNA, which is essentially the code for all bodily processes. And all animals, all living things have this code. And so we share about 80 to 90% of the same DNA with mice, meaning despite how we look on the outside, on a biological level, we're very similar to mice. This can also be seen in the way that our bodies work very similar to mice. We just happen to be larger in size and look different. And additionally, mice have a shorter lifespan than us. So while we humans live for very long periods of time, mice only live for about a few years, making them easy to study in a lab. And lastly, they're pretty inexpensive, and we are able to mimic their habitats in a comfortable way within the lab, whereas we wouldn't be able to contain humans in a lab and ensure that they are tested in a correct manner. And so in doing this, we have various organizations and policies that make sure that the mice are dealt properly and that they're dealt ethically. And so the first one is the Institutional Animal Use and Care Committee, which oversees a lot of research in universities like the lab that I am in. We go through this committee and they oversee and make sure that the research is ethical and humane. And then along with that, there are these policies like the Animal Welfare Act and the policy of humane care and use of laboratory animals to ensure that the animals are used properly and not an inhumane way. And so together, these things make sure that the mice are dealt properly in the lab. And so, what's next? Once the researchers are approved by the various organizations, they will either start their research on mice or they will continue their use on mice. And depending on the outcomes, they will report their conclusions and they will be then used to inform other experiments. And first, if the cancer drug is fairly new and more experimentation is required, they will continue with the mice research, as we've been talking about. And once they prove that the drug is not as harmful to mice and the mice can so continue to live and there are benefits to the drug, we may move to human trials, which are also known as clinical trials. And we then try the drug on humans in a clinical setting, and we see how the human body behaves differently than mice and see if that drug can be used to treat cancer. And so altogether, researchers use these mice models to create drugs for diseases such as cancer because they're so biologically similar to us, and this ensures that before we start treating on humans, the drug is proven safe. Thank you.